The first alert does not arrive with sirens. It arrives as a line on a screen, one number sliding upward when it should be stable. Then another. Then another. Oroville's gauges show a climb so steep that the graph looks wrong at first glance, like a hand dragged straight up through the chart. Operators stare, refresh, cross-check. The line keeps rising. In the same window, tremor indicators begin to light up. Small hits, tight clusters, the kind that usually means something underground is shifting. Phones start ringing before anyone finishes a sentence. Field crews are told to move. Supervisors are told to watch the damn face. And in Oroville, the one thing nobody wants to say out loud starts taking shape in the control room. Something is moving where it should not move, and the lake is responding. The atmosphere around the reservoir is calm enough to feel unreal. The surface water looks ordinary from a distance, until you get close and see the shoreline behaving strangely, lapping and pressing at places that were dry ground hours earlier. The intake tower sits like a fixed landmark, but the waterline beneath it is creeping up the structure in a way that does not match the schedule operators expect. Buoys appear slightly out of place. A floating dock pulls at its cables as if someone is steadily tightening them. There is no dramatic wave, no obvious crash, no visible wall of water, just a quiet but relentless gain, an ascent that is happening too quickly to ignore. In the control room, the sequence accelerates. A technician checks rainfall sensors. The local readings are minimal. Radar maps show weather patterns, but the immediate conditions around the lake are not giving the control room a clean, comforting explanation. At the same time, upstream release logs are checked. The numbers do not line up with a sudden jump that fast. The first phrase that spreads is not a diagnosis, it's a reaction, it's spiking. The second phrase follows right after, we're not alone in seeing it. Because the spike is not showing up in just one feed. Multiple monitors match. Multiple systems agree. The curve is real. The coal tree expands outward. Water managers contact state partners. Emergency coordinators request situational reports. The dam, already known in California as a place where nothing is taken casually, suddenly becomes a live incident again. Oroville is not just a lake. It is a critical node. It is the kind of place where a few feet on a chart translates into decisions that ripple far beyond the shoreline. Then the tremors tighten. Not a Hollywood earthquake. Not a shaking that throws people to the ground. Instead, clustered pings, small and persistent, arriving close enough in time to feel synchronized with the surge. The seismic feed does not scream. It whispers, but it whispers insistently. And in a room where everyone remembers what an overlooked warning looks like, whispers are enough. Officials do not announce a miracle. They do not announce a catastrophe. They announce that they are monitoring, that they are verifying, that multiple instruments are being reviewed. The words are controlled. The faces are not. You can see it in how quickly people move from one screen to the next, how often the same numbers are checked again and again, as if repetition might change them. Outside, residents near the lake are not reading charts. They are watching the water claim their margins. A man walks down to the edge where his property usually levels out into dry gravel. The gravel is gone. The water has pushed farther inland, not by a dramatic slam, but by steady occupation, like a slow invasion. He takes out his phone, records the new line, pans across the bank. He doesn't have to narrate. The visual does it for him. Within minutes, that clip is moving through groups and feeds. Is this normal? The answer is not simple, and the uncertainty is what stings. The dam's history sits like a weight on every decision being made. The year 2017 is not a distant story here. It is a memory with names, roots, and fear attached to it. Communities downstream remember evacuation traffic, the sound of alerts, the sense of being pushed out of their homes by the possibility of a structural failure. In February 2017, evacuation orders impacted roughly 188,000 people after spillway damage and emergency spillway concerns escalated rapidly, scripts UCSD. That event becomes a permanent lens through which every anomaly is judged. So now, as charts rise and tremors tick, nobody in authority wants to be the person who says it's fine too early. A short statement is prepared. The language is careful. It acknowledges the rise. It references inflows and monitoring. It avoids dramatic conclusions. But while the public hears "we are assessing," The teams closer to the dam are already shifting into a more urgent operational posture, because there is a difference between messaging and readiness. Instrument techs pull diagnostic logs. Backup sensors are compared. Manual readings are requested. If the surge is real, it must show up everywhere. If the surge is a glitch, it should fail in at least one independent system. But the lines keep matching. The numbers keep aligning. In the broader news stream, 23 feet becomes the headline number, because it is big enough to stop scrolling. And the way this story moves online, the number becomes a weapon. Some clips suggest it's instant. Some captions say overnight. Some say no rain. The narrative fractures immediately into competing versions. And that fracture becomes part of the danger, because when information splinters, fear fills the gaps. What is verifiable in recent reporting is that Lake Oroville has experienced rapid rises tied to intense storms and high inflows, with coverage describing a 23-foot rise over 3 days and inflows peaking above 89,000 cubic feet per second during storm periods. Action News Now. Another report similarly frames the rapid rise as storm-driven and emphasizes the monitoring of flood risk and reservoir management. Active NorCal. But on social media, the storm context often disappears, and what remains is the most frightening version, a lake rising for no reason. Inside the incident response circle, the fear is not the internet story. The fear is the combination, water movement plus ground movement plus a structure that must never be surprised. The warning signs do not look like a single red light. They look like small irregularities stacking up, a reading that is slightly off, a pressure trend that doesn't match the expected pattern, a drainage output that appears cloudier than it should, a vibration signature that feels different than the baseline. None of these alone is a headline. Together, they form a picture that refuses to be ignored. Crews move along access points with clipboards and radios. They look for seepage. They look for wet spots where there shouldn't be any. They listen for unusual sounds, because large concrete structures under stress do not always fail silently. They can groan. They can ring. They can produce subtle signals that only become obvious once someone is trained to notice them. The waterline continues its steady climb. Shoreline features vanish. Small trees at the edge become surrounded. A bench that once sat above the lake looks closer to the water than it did yesterday. A boat ramp disappears under a thin sheet, turning a familiar path into a hazard. At the same time, commuters downstream, people who do not live near the lake but live near the river pathways, are suddenly hearing the word Oroville more often than they want. It's on radios. It's on phones. It's in workplace chats. And because memory is sharp, the 2017 evacuation is not just history. It becomes a rehearsal in the mind. A mother in a downstream town watches her child's school pickup line and thinks about roads. She thinks about where traffic jammed before. She remembers the sensation of being told to leave without knowing if there will be a home to return to. She doesn't wait for an official order to feel the stress. She starts topping off her gas tank. She starts charging devices. She starts gathering documents, not because she knows she must run, but because she knows how fast must run can arrive. This is how disaster anxiety works. It spreads faster than water. Inside the response rooms, the focus shifts from what is happening to what happens next. Because if the surge continues, operational decisions must be made. If the lake climbs into specific thresholds, releases may be required. Releases affect downstream. Downstream affects people. And any release decision is now being made in the shadow of the last major crisis at this same dam. Emergency agencies coordinate across the matrix that defines modern California preparedness. There are calls with water resources officials, dam safety specialists, local law enforcement, county emergency managers. Everyone wants to know the same things. How fast is it moving? Is it slowing? Are the tremors changing? Is there seepage? Is there deformation? The answers arrive in fragments, updated minute by minute. Seismologists look at the tremor pattern, not for drama, but for meaning. Are the pings migrating? Are they clustering? Are they shallow or deeper? Are they consistent with background noise or indicating a change? They do not have the luxury of a definitive conclusion in the moment. They have trending data and the pressure of time. On the ground, residents begin to notice the lake surface behaving oddly in certain coves. Not giant whirlpools, smaller restlessness, patches of agitated water that don't match wind patterns. Videos appear. Some are real, some are old, some are mislabeled. But the effect is the same, the sense that something beneath the water is active. The phrase that starts circulating among anxious watchers is simple: what's happening beneath? As the hours pass, the story becomes less about the initial surge and more about instability. The public imagines a single event, a spike, then a stop. The professionals worry about a system, conditions that create more conditions. Water load changes pressure on canyon walls and foundation zones. Movement changes pathways. Pathways change water behavior. And when you have a structure holding back an enormous body of water, you do not get to treat any unusual combination as harmless until it proves itself harmless. Now the fear climbs into worst-case thinking, not as theater, but as planning. Worst case at Oroville is never a small thing. It is a cascading chain. Higher levels push toward spillway decisions. Spillway decisions push toward downstream impacts. Structural stress pushes toward emergency actions. Emergency actions push toward evacuations that can paralyze an entire region. Roads become choke points. Hospitals become pressured. Shelters fill. Communication lines overload. People who require assistance become vulnerable first. And in the middle of all that planning sits the human reality. The people who will not have time to understand the technical explanation. They will only have time to react. In one neighborhood, a man who works night shift returns home at sunrise to see his partner awake, fully dressed, bags near the door. He thinks someone died. She tells him she's watching the updates and she doesn't like the way officials are speaking. Monitoring, she says, is what they said last time. He knows she isn't wrong to be scared. He also knows that panic can stampede people into danger. He tries to keep the house calm, but calm is hard when your brain keeps replaying evacuation footage from years ago. At a marina, workers attempt to secure equipment that now sits closer to water than expected. A small storage shed that was safe yesterday is at risk of flooding today. They hustle, not because the lake is raging, but because the lake is rising with intent. The quietness of it makes it more unsettling, like a threat that isn't shouting because it doesn't need to. Farther downstream, emergency planners begin to consider messaging and staging. They do not want to issue evacuation orders without a clear trigger. They also do not want to wait until traffic control is impossible. They begin preparing resources, barricades, signage, staff. They contact shelter partners. They check supplies. They review routes. The first infrastructure strain shows up in communication. People call lines for information. Those lines fill. Social media becomes the default emergency channel, which means rumor competes with fact in the same scroll. That competition has consequences. A single viral clip can send hundreds of people to a road at the same time, either to look or to flee. Roads near dams become crowded with watchers. Watchers become obstacles. Obstacles slow response. So law enforcement is asked to manage access. Barriers go up. Patrols increase. The lake becomes not just a reservoir, but a controlled zone. Back at the dam, the inspectors focus on the areas that matter most. A dam does not need to break from the top down. It can fail through unseen pathways, through erosion that starts small and becomes a tunnel, through seepage that begins as a stain and becomes a breach. The signs can be subtle. Cloudy drainage water, small sinkholes, unusual wetness, abnormal sensor pressure. This is why teams are scanning, sampling, measuring, documenting. The data continues to come in. Some elements are reassuring. The structure is holding. The main face shows no immediate visible break. Key readings remain within acceptable ranges. But acceptable in a live anomaly is not comfort. It is simply time bought. Then the tremor feed updates again. More pings. A tighter cluster. A moment where the line spikes just enough to make everyone pause and look at the same screen. It is not a major quake, but it is enough to underline the story. Whatever is happening is not purely surface level. Now the authorities' reaction hardens. You can hear it in how the language shifts from casual monitoring to heightened readiness. Extra crews are requested. Outside experts are consulted. The goal becomes to avoid surprise. Surprise is what turns anomalies into disasters. In the towns below, the human impact grows heavier. Parents ask schools what the plan is. Schools review their own emergency protocols. Businesses wonder if supply routes will be disrupted. Truckers listen to the radio and think about alternative highways. Nurses in local hospitals ask administrators if there is a contingency for an influx of evacuees or injuries.